Welcome. This is the part 3 for the lecture on late Baroque to the Age of Enlightenment. And when we last left off, we were talking about the end of the Rococo. Um, as you see, Rococo gets a little bit frivolous, um, and so it's understandable why art would have shifted towards more serious, why a return to these kind of neoclassical values, and and then we see that especially in works by David. And let's go to a little bit of an earlier work of David's. So David is um, he's similar to Poussin in a way, but even in some ways even more hardcore and more um, interested in um, giving less pleasure, visually, and making the work more austere, more just about the strength of the storytelling and the virtue of the narrative. Um, and many of his paintings are very much about um, they're they're both about the ideals of the classical world, but then applying them uh, to the problems of today. They are in both in the way they're painted and then in what they are depicting. They are arguments that our world should be more like the virtuous and honorable world of the ancients. And so with David, we start to set up a new um, difficulty for artists. Artists have to kind of figure out a new place for them within this place, because now we have these two poles. On one side, we have kind of the remnants of the Baroque, like such as with Tiepolo and the paintings he's painting, and we have um, still some interest in the Rococo, but then we have this other kind of example of David, and so artists like Lebrun are kind of navigating this sort of in between path. They to make sure that they are making artwork that is pleasing to the people that they are painting for, and you can see in Lebrun's paintings um, both kinds of pleasure. Like her paint handling, her color especially shows um, shows an influence from the Rococo, but but there is um, more of a more of a neoclassical seriousness to the work. Chardin went in a different direction in some ways, focusing more on genre scenes and as a way of kind of avoiding this or finding a new path in this conflict. And here's another artist who I specifically like. I saw this pastel drawing by Jean-Etienne Litard um, in the it was at the Getty, and I was so blown away by it that I've been really interested in Lyotard since. He was Swiss, French Swiss, moved to Paris to work there, and there is also in his work there's a lighthearted tone that reminds you a little bit of the Rococo, but there's a kind of um, a stiffness and a solidity to everything that is similar to the neoclassical works. And then let's look at how these influences play out in England. In England, we see, I'm just going to talk about two main painters, Gainsborough. And Gainsborough is by no means a Rococo artist, but you can see kind of like that sort of influence, and that's like that his paint handling is much looser and more transparent than his contemporaries. Um, the way he deals with his sitters, they're a little bit more light-hearted, more often a little bit more seductive, and less serious and stern. Whereas Sir Joshua Reynolds is a little bit more on the neoclassical side. You never would call him a neoclassicist, because there's not a lot of moral storytelling in his paintings, but he's a little bit more rigorous in his in that, like his desire for paint handling to be less apparent, less gestural, and he's also much more interested in his compositions and his sitters seeming to be serious. And the last artist I want to talk about of the British is also the last artist I want to talk about in general, because this whole trend has been moving towards, more and more to the age of reason, the age of the Enlightenment. And but one of the things is that there really is no, I guess to a certain degree, the neoclassicism of David can be described as artwork of the age of Enlightenment, but there is no real artwork that would say, yeah, that was the age of Enlightenment. But we can see a hint of what it could have been with the artwork of Joseph Wright of Derby. And but and I guess one of my theories is that one of the reasons why we don't have more artwork like this, is because of the revolutions that intervened. Um, but that could be wrong. But this is a great painting, very dramatic, and kind of using almost a Baroque sense of tenebrristic lighting. And he's running an experiment. The little girl is sad here because she knows that the bird's going to die as the oxygen runs out. The fire that's burning is going to pull the oxygen out of the tank, right? But it's all for science, so she shouldn't cry. All right, that's the end.